The issues affecting you. Revealed, explained, discussed. Now on WGAL 8 in Focus.
Hello, I'm Susan Shapiro. The general election is now less than 2 months away. Voters in Pennsylvania will elect a U.S. senator, governor, and representatives in Congress. And all state representatives are up for election, and half of the state senators. The last day to register to vote is October 24th for this election. The number of registered voters peaked in November 2020 with more than 9 million people registered to vote. It's been about 8.7 million since then, with Democrats outnumbering Republicans as of May by about 550,000. Tonight, we'll take a look at the voter registration process, what you need to know, and the effort to get more younger voters registered. And we'll talk about a group trying to change the way we vote in the primary in Pennsylvania. We're putting voter registration in focus. Joining us now is Acting Secretary of State Leigh Chapman. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
How is registration going, and why can it be difficult for people to register to vote?
You know, registration is going well. So the registration deadline in Pennsylvania is October 24th. And so we're doing everything we can to really meet voters where they are and provide information on how to register to vote in the Commonwealth. Of course, voters can register online or using a paper mail-in voter registration application. And we actually just made an enhancement a few weeks ago where we integrated the voter registration and vote by mail application. So now it's a one-stop shop. People can download that form on our website and register to vote and also request a mail-in ballot all at the same time. So it's going well, but we are making sure that we are trying to close the gap. There's currently around 1.7 million eligible but unregistered voters here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So we are working very closely with the counties, with election stakeholders to make sure that we're getting the word out about voter registration here.
Why do you think there is such a big gap?
There's various reasons why people do not register to vote. There's actually a recent census report from 2020 that polled voters all around the country. And, voter apathy is one reason. Just not having interest in candidates is another reason. And also just not knowing how to register, right? Not having accessible information. So, we are really trying to tackle that third thing and making sure that voters have information in all different forms on how to register to vote here in Pennsylvania.
What kind of information does someone need if they want to register?
So there's certain eligibility requirements to register to vote. So of course you have to be 18 years old. You have to be a citizen of the United States. You have to be a resident of the Commonwealth for at least 30 days before the next election. So knowing those eligibility requirements is important. And all that information is online on our website, which is vote.pa.gov. So individuals can find that information. Also, it's available on our online voter registration application and also on the mail-in ballot application as well.
What are you seeing in terms of the demographics of the voters, if you have that information?
We don't capture demographic data on our voter registration application. It's actually optional. So, with actually the new registration form, we've included a new gender option. So now we have an option for non-binary voters as well, which is something that PennDOT has been doing with driver's licenses for a few years now. But, race and gender are optional. So it's hard for us to capture demographic information when it comes to that.
Because there have been some anecdotal stories that more younger people inspired by some issues are registering to vote. Do you think that's true?
Yes. And, we've received a lot of inquiries also from reporters about the impact on from the Dobbs decision. And we have seen more women, get on the voter rolls in recent months, according to third-party sources as well.
Well, stay with us. We'll talk more about the initiative that the governor has signed an executive order for, and also what you expect on Election Day.
Thank you.
This is WGAL 8 in Focus. Coverage you can count on.
We continue our conversation with Acting Secretary of State Leigh Chapman about voter registration and the upcoming election. The governor signed an executive order increasing access to voter registration. Why was that necessary, and what does it entail?
There are 1.7 eligible but unregistered voters in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So this is just another way that we can reach voters where they are and provide more opportunities for voters to register to vote in Pennsylvania. So what the executive order does is it requires 7 state agencies to provide voter registration forms when they interact with citizens that are doing everyday activities. So for instance, we provided voter registration forms to the 121 state parks. So as Pennsylvanians are visiting state parks with their families, they can pick up a voter registration form and register to vote. Other agencies include the Department of State, which is my department. Surprisingly, we weren't required to do that. So we are now required when people go to file a license, professional license, or, file their business registration, we'll have forms available. Also at the farm show, the DMVA, also for Department of Corrections. So it's really just about meeting voters where they are and providing additional opportunities for people to register to vote.
Hitting them where they are. The election is not that far off. Are there enough elections workers and poll workers from your vantage point?
It's always a challenge making sure that we are adequately staffing up at the county level when it comes to poll workers. Even before the COVID-19 pandemic, this was a challenge. So we are doing everything we can at the Department of State to support county election directors to make sure that they have enough individuals to fully staff, the polls. You need at least 5 individuals at each polling place. There's over 9,000 polling places. So to have a fully staffed election, it's around 45,000 people, which is a tremendous feat. So we have been pushing out a form for people to sign up if they're interested in becoming a poll worker. We need more people. Poll workers are your neighbors. They are people who live in your communities, and it's a great way to serve our country and our democracy.
Some of these workers across the country have come under fire. What are your concerns about that, and what are you doing to possibly protect them if need be?
It's really unfortunate. We have seen that over the last few years. We've had around 35 new election directors since 2020. People have left for various reasons, from planned retirements, but also because of threats. Election workers are really the frontline workers in our democracy, and it's unfortunate that they have seen recent threats in years when it comes to just doing their jobs. They just are trying to, in a nonpartisan way, making sure people can exercise their constitutional right to vote and cast their ballot. So, we've been having trainings with counties. We're trying to make sure that they're fully supported to make sure that they are executing the election.
We have seen some problems in the past, especially, with the count of mail-in ballots, with printing errors. Obviously, you still can't pre-canvass the ballots. So what do you expect for this election in terms of hedging any of those things off?
We are expecting that it's going to take a few days for us to have official returns when it comes to elections this November. As you mentioned, we don't have pre-canvassing, which means that election workers can't start opening and processing mail-in ballots until the morning of election day. In some other states like Florida, we have results very quickly because counties have weeks in advance to start processing those mail-in ballots. So because of that, it's going to take a few days. And we saw that in the 2020 election and also in the 2022 primary. So it's important that we're just managing expectations, that in Pennsylvania, it might be a few days for results and people won't have them on election night.
And just quickly, there's obviously been a lot of discussion about voter identification. That still is not existing in Pennsylvania, or not being asked for, correct, when people go to the polls this fall?
So Pennsylvania does not have a strict voter identification law. In Pennsylvania, first-time voters have to show some type of form of ID, and also voters who vote by mail. But we don't have the type of voter ID that you hear in other states like Texas, for example. But we have all of the information as far as what documents you need when you're a first-time voter on our website, which is vote.pa.gov.
All right. I guess it's going to be a busy few weeks for you coming up.
Yes, it definitely will be.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
And coming up on WGAL 8 in Focus, we'll look at the move to get more young people to register to vote.
This is WGAL 8 in Focus, coverage you can count on.
Joining us now are two leaders of the Campus Vote Project of Fair Election Center, Ricardo Almodovar, the state coordinator, and Joey Olah, the deputy state coordinator. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Your organization focuses on young people registering to vote and getting out to vote. Joey, why is that so important?
So the younger generation is actually the voting demographic that turns out the least. So it's so important to make sure that young people know that there is an outlet to advocate for their own issues. Everybody deserves to have their voice heard in a way that really creates real change and that really matters.
So what do you do in terms of trying to get students registered on campuses?
So we do a number of things with the Campus Vote Project, and so we run three major initiatives. We have our Democracy Fellowship, we have a Voter-Friendly Campus Program, and we have our Pennsylvania Youth Voting Summit. And so what we do is we encourage young folks, and we get them involved in several programs. We also provide election law trainings through our parent organization, the Fair Election Center. And so our legal counsel, they're based in Washington, D.C. They help us provide the most up-to-date election law materials that's Pennsylvania state specific. And our job is to share that out with our students through our Democracy Fellowship. We work with 40 college students in our program across the state on different campuses. And our hope is that they are able to that our hope is for them to receive the tools necessary for success on their campus, and that looks differently depending on where they go, their personalities. But we want to make sure that those tools are given so they can actually share that information and convey it in a way that makes them empowered to make a decision at the ballot box.
To vote. It's easy to register, but how do you get them out to vote on Election Day, or vote by mail, I guess now we can do?
Yeah, definitely. We need everybody to know every option to be engaged. And of course, in our country, people are working, people have classes, especially students that may be working with classes. The people that have issues that are the most prominent right now are the same people who are going to school, who are working two jobs, who are so busy. And asking them to come out and vote, it's such a big civic duty. But we need to be motivating people so they have the confidence to know that if they do come out to vote, if they do come together with their peers, that they can create real change. And that's so big, that's such a big part of what we do is actually talking to students, letting them come together, letting them see the entire social movement. It's not just social media anymore. We can get people in person creating real change.
Are there any specific issues this year that you think are motivating these young people to register and to vote?
Definitely issues of climate justice. Roe v. Wade is becoming a very prominent news story right now. Every year, economic issues will be in the forefront. How people want the issue with student loan debt handled. These are all issues affecting college students and everybody in general, no matter what side they're on. From the cities to the countryside, everywhere in between. Pennsylvania is a very diverse place with many different demographics, so there's a plethora, there's so many issues that people really care about, and we need to make sure that they are ready to go have their voices heard.
Do you think more young people are registering and going to vote this year?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So at the Campus Vote Project, we use a bunch of data and analytics. We use the NSOV report, which is the National Study of Learning, Voting, and Engagement through Tufts University. So they analyze student voting rates on campuses across the country. So we use all of that information to help guide campuses to make sure that they improve those student voting rates. And students are breaking records. The national average in 2016 was 66%, and in 2020, we're still analyzing the data. I'm not quite sure what the number is, but it's much higher than 66%. In many campuses, we see voting rates up to 85%, depending on the area they live. And so we use data to make sure that we are informed. And that we can actually measure improvement in voting or student voting rates, not just in Pennsylvania, but across the country.
Yeah, that's encouraging.
Definitely. It definitely is, and a huge part of what we do is working with college students. We have our Democracy Fellowship program, where we have fellows independently working on college campuses across Pennsylvania, and their job is to make sure that their peers are up to date on what the latest election laws are, how to vote. A big issue with college students, and I had this issue when I was in college, because I live more in the Northumberland County region. That's where I'm from, so I was still registered to vote there. So I had to drive home 2 hours to vote because I never changed my address to where I was going to college, and I never requested a mail-in ballot. So making sure college students know where to vote, when to vote, how to vote is so important, especially for out-of-state students. We want to make sure they're voting in their states as well. Democracy is not just a Pennsylvania thing. We care about democracy all across the country. We have a lot of New Jersey, Delaware. We have to make sure that anybody that's a student, any young person is ready to engage.
That's great. Do you think maybe a lot of students are lacking in civics education when they come to college?
I would say in many cases, yes, sadly. And so we're lucky that we can be a resource for young folks, that we can help students, share that information, like our election law materials. We also, what stands us out at the Campus Vote Project is that we have our statewide cohort of 40 Democracy Fellows. We also have hundreds of Democracy Fellows across the country who are student leaders who are passionate about doing this work. And it just so happens a lot of them are political science majors, which happen to also be very in the heat of this work. But we are working to diversify our pool. We have business majors joining our program. We have engineering majors joining our program.
Well, everyone gets to vote, so it
exactly.
doesn't matter what your major is, right? Well, thank you both for being here. We appreciate it.
Yes. Thank you for having us.
And coming up on WGAL 8 in Focus, we'll learn about a group that wants to change the way people vote in Pennsylvania, allowing for open primaries.
This is WGAL 8 in Focus, coverage you can count on.
Joining us now is David Thornburg, who's the chair of Ballot PA, which is a project of the Committee of 70, a group set up to protect and improve the voting process. Thanks so much for being here.
Oh, my pleasure, Susan.
Your group is working to have Pennsylvania have open primaries. Tell me, what is a closed primary?
Sure. Well, Pennsylvania is one of only 9 states that closes its primaries, which means that it bars independent voters from participating. And we have 1.3 million independent voters in Pennsylvania. It's a fast-growing part of the electorate. And unfortunately, we don't let those folks participate in making a fundamental choice about who represents them.
How did we get to be a closed primary state, and how has it lasted so long?
Like most things in Pennsylvania, it has a long history. It goes back to 1937 in the election code. And I remind people that also in the election code is a provision that every voter should be provided a lantern to eliminate the ballot when they go in the. So that tells you how out of date that code is. But it was trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist anymore, and now we're stuck with the consequences.
Yeah. So there is a lot of support for this, isn't there?
There is. We did some polling among partisan Republicans and Democrats, so not just independents. And found that there's about 74% of the people that we polled supported this. Across the political segments, if you will, 69% of identified Trump Republicans to 85% of progressive Democrats, and everyone else is in between. So we've also, I should say, this proposal has been endorsed by about 20 news organizations around the Commonwealth, which I think reflects the community's support as well.
Yeah, and you mentioned to me earlier, a lot of journalists are among the unaffiliated.
Yeah, and I feel like you shouldn't have to trade your constitutional right to vote just to hold a job. That just feels like an unfair trade to me.
Are there some in the political parties who say, well, if you're not registered with our party, you shouldn't have a right to choose our candidate?
Well, there's all kinds of things that are said about this issue. I don't think that one holds water. First of all, I remind them that we all pay for primary elections.
Right. And they're expensive.
Yeah, and therefore we all should be able to participate. And if the parties want to have some other process to choose their candidates, a caucus or a convention or whatever, they're welcome to do that. But once they ask us all to pay for it, we should all be able to participate. This is also not anti-party. It's important to say that. It's pro-voter, but I think this could actually be good for the parties because it gives them a chance to get to know this growing segment of the voters earlier rather than later, which could help them win general elections.
And your organization is focused a little on veterans who are among those unaffiliated.
Yeah, this was mind-blowing. 1 in 2 veterans identify as political independents. And there are 800,000 veterans in Pennsylvania, meaning that, if half of that number feels they're independent and we shut them out of primary elections, we're shutting out men and women who have served their country, who have put their lives on the line to defend our freedoms, and that just feels plain wrong to me.
Who've defended our right to vote, right?
Yeah.
Just quickly, where does the legislation stand?
Well, there are bills in both the House and Senate with Republican prime sponsors. Each has had a committee hearing in the House and Senate, and we're hopeful that before the end of this session, those bills will get voted onto the floor, approved on the floor, and sent to the governor. We think there's a path here.
And what happens after the election then? Does that have to come back up for?
No, that would be the law, and then we would move to implementing them. And our hope is that we could do that in time for the 2023 primary.
Yeah, and then it would not change things significantly in terms of how you vote or go to the polls.
No, it's just, as I said, it's a question of fairness first and foremost. But I also think that it could help moderate some of the extremes on both sides. Primary elections often, people who participate in them tend to be more extreme, again, both left and right. That produces more extreme candidates, and I don't think that's good for the democratic process.
And help get more young people involved in the process, right?
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it, and we appreciate your time.
Great.
If you have any questions about registering to vote or voting, we have a voter's guide at WGAL.com. Just look under the politics section. The deadline to register for the general election is October 24th. And thank you for joining us for WGAL 8 in Focus. For all of us at WGAL, I'm Susan Shapiro. And join us again next Saturday night at 7 o'clock for WGAL 8 in Focus, right after NBC Nightly News. And you can watch each episode of In Focus, plus WGAL's latest newscasts, original programming, and more. Just download the Very Local app and stream for free on Roku and Amazon Fire TV.